Good morning and welcome to Mottram Cemetery in Greater Manchester. Now today, I must warn you before we start this, it is about a young lady who sadly had her life taken from her at the slight age of 17. But it is very nasty what this gentleman did to her. So I strongly advise that anyone who gets upset by this sort of story, I recommend they switch off now, because I will be describing injuries that were done to her during the course of this crime. So anyone who's likely to be upset, now's your chance to switch off. Now this video is about the murder of Kelly Ann Bates. Kelly Ann Bates, she was a 17-year-old girl who was groomed by a much older man. He was in his 50s, and she'd been around babysitting, I think, around a friend's house, and a fella from there picked her up and took her home, and then spent the next few months grooming her and ended up in a relationship with her. But anyway, I'll tell you all about that now while we have a look around this cemetery. And in the background you've got a church there that's being renovated. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll spin you around. We'll have a look around this little cemetery while I tell you about Kelly Ann Bates.
Kelly Ann Bates was born in Hattersley, Greater Manchester on 18th of May 1978. Her family was always very close and described Kelly as confident, independent and mature for her age. In school she was known as a keen athlete and had ambitions of one day becoming a teacher. In 1994, Kelly Ann enrolled in college in Hyde so that she could improve her GCSE results and get onto a teacher training course. To help fund her way through college, she was working for a graphics firm in Audenshaw. On the surface, Kelly Ann appeared to be like any regular teenage girl, but she was hiding a dark secret. When she was just 14 years old, she met James Patterson Smith, who was 32 years her senior. The two crossed paths when Kelly Ann was babysitting for one of Smith's friends. That night he walked her home to keep her safe. After this, the older man began to groom Kelly Ann. At first, she was blissfully unaware of Smith's disturbing past. He had been married twice to the same woman, Janice Anderson. Throughout both marriages, Smith exhibited extreme jealousy and was prone to violence. He had sought out psychiatric help in 1980 for said jealousy, but Smith couldn't overcome the overpowering emotions and the couple got divorced. Other relationships that Smith had followed a very similar pattern. Tina Martin, who had dated Smith in 1970 when she was 20 years old, was another victim of his violent outbursts. On one occasion he held Tina's head underwater in a bathtub. She described herself as a punchbag throughout their relationship and recalled, "At first it was now and then, but at the end it was every day." The grooming process between Kelly Ann and Smith was so secretive that her parents were completely unaware of Smith's existence until she turned 16. They became aware that Kelly Ann had what she described as a boyfriend, but they had no idea that he was more than 3 decades older than their teenage daughter. In November 1995, 17-year-old Kelly Ann moved out of the family home and into Smith's home in Gorton, Greater Manchester. As time progressed, she began seeing less and less of her parents. When she did show up at the family home, she was oftentimes covered with bruises and bite marks. When queried about the injuries, she passed them off as accidents. Her parents thought about contacting the police to conduct a welfare check, but since Kellyanne was 17 years old, they knew the police would do very little. Eventually, she stopped seeing her parents completely. The last time they saw her was on the 30th of November 1995. They anticipated that she would show up at the family home over Christmas, but the festive period came and went and Kellyanne was a no-show. Around the same time, she quit her job at K2 Graphics in Audenshaw. She still remained in contact with her parents over the phone, but these phone calls were few and far between, and her mother, Margaret, couldn't help but notice that Kellyanne sounded different. On 16th of April 1996, Smith entered the police station and calmly told the officers that Kellyanne was dead at their home. Police embarked on the two-bedroom semi-detached house in a quiet cul-de-sac in Gorton. They were directed to the upstairs bedroom. When they entered, they were taken aback by the brutality of the scene before them. The walls and ceiling were splattered with blood, and lying motionless on the floor was the body of Kellyanne Bates. Smith was immediately arrested and taken back to the police station for questioning. William Lawler, the Home Office pathologist who examined her body, said, "In my career, I have examined almost 600 victims of homicide, but I have never come across injuries so extensive. There were over 150 separate injuries on her body. During the last month of her life, she had been kept bound, sometimes tied to a radiator or furniture by her hair, other times by her neck using a ligature." The following injuries were found on Kellyanne's body: scalding to her buttocks and left leg, burns on her thigh caused by the application of a hot iron, a fractured arm, multiple stab wounds caused by knives, forks and scissors, stab wounds inside her mouth, crush injuries to both hands, mutilation of her ears, nose, eyebrows, mouth, lips and genitalia, wounds caused by a spade and pruning shears. Both eyes were gouged out. Later stab wounds to the empty eye sockets. Partial scalping. The pathologist determined that her eyes had been removed not less than 5 days and not more than 3 weeks before her death. She had been starved, having lost around 20 kilograms in weight, and had not received water for several days before her death. The cause of death was drowning, immediately prior to which she had been beaten about the head with the shower head. When pressed for a motive, Smith chillingly replied, "She just wouldn't leave me alone. She put me through hell winding me up. She was blackmailing me." He claimed that Kellyanne would often purposefully bump into things. He stated, "She has a bad habit of hurting herself to make it look worse for me." He also denied having starved Kellyanne or holding her under bath water until she died. Smith's trial was set to start in November 1997. The jury at Manchester Crown Court took 1 hour to find Smith guilty of the murder of Kellyanne Bates. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years. The jury were offered professional counselling to help them deal with the distress of seeing the photographs of Kellyanne's injuries and the sickening violence of the case. Every member of the jury accepted this offer. Kellyanne Bates was buried in Mottram Cemetery in Greater Manchester, which is where we are today.
Well, that's all the information I could get on Kellyanne Bates. Now, it's the usual problem I have when I'm researching. When you do murders, when you research murders, all the information is about the murderer. There's really not a massive amount about the actual victim. And in this case, I think it's quite important that the victim should be represented, because what that man did to her was pure evil. And it brings back the old question again, doesn't it? Should we bring back capital punishment? I think in certain circumstances, such as these ones, I think yes. This man was pure evil and he does not deserve to live, not after what he did to that poor young girl. But anyway, her final resting place is up here in front of me. So I'll spin you around, and as per usual, we'll go and have a look at it together. Now I had to get up, or I had to leave home this morning at 2:30 to get here for 10 to 7. It's a long old drive. Now I was up here a week ago and I came to this cemetery and I could not find her grave. Now I looked through all these ones here on my left, and because you can see now she died in 1996. These graves I'm looking at just now, 2014, 2014, 2014, 2015. I looked through all these ones on my left hand side here and thought, nope, she's not going to be down here because these are all too new. So I went up and looked at the ones that where I started filming on this video. Now up here in front of me there's a gateway into this part of the cemetery which I came through. Up here on the left with a little canopy. Now I came through there to look down at these graves and I thought, I'm not going to look through all these ones because they're all way too new. But maybe I should have done. Maybe I should have done. Because one of the first graves I would have seen is this one here to the right. And this is the final resting place of Kellyanne Bates. Precious and treasured memories of Kellyanne Bates, aged 17 years. Beloved daughter of Tommy and Margaret, much loved sister of Andrew and Paul. Sadly missed by family and friends. Born 18th of May 1978, taken from us on 16th of April 1996. Forever a bright light shining in our hearts. Also Margaret Bates, much loved wife, mum and grandma, 24th of the 6th 1954, 17/12/20. Always in our hearts. Good night and God bless, sweetheart, until we meet again. And someone's actually taken a picture off the headstone. But that is the final resting place of Kellyanne Bates. Now I can't believe when I came down this little path I'm walking on now, I actually came through here. So look, I'm just going under it now. I actually came in under this canopy, walked down this pathway here and looked at these graves. If I'd looked just behind that little tree there, she's the very first grave. But anyway, that was the final resting place of Kellyanne Bates. Now I know this was a very sad story. It was absolutely disgusting what that man did to that poor young girl. And as I said before, in certain extreme circumstances such as these, bring back capital punishment. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing. It's absolutely free. And if you do subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you will be notified whenever I upload a new video. Anyway, that's it. That's me, Darren, from Mottram Cemetery in Greater Manchester. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.